I once kept a favorite concubine. After he became regent, the first thing he did was slaughter my entire family and sell me into a brothel. 3 years ago, I saved his life, provided for his every need, and even bought him silk socks. Yet now, he wears my elder brother's head at his waist and has me dragged to the lowest brothel. Shuangwen. Do you know how I endured these 3 years of humiliation? Today, it is your turn to suffer this shame. He ordered that for just 1 coin, anyone could have the noble body of the daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion. After being reborn, the first thing I did was kneel before my father. Father, your daughter is willing to enter the palace. Chapter 1. When I died, my clothes were stripped off, and my entire body was exposed to those depraved rogues. Xiaoyunjing knew how to kill with his heart. He knew that chastity was the most precious thing to a woman of the inner chambers. So he deliberately sent the most vulgar and crude soldiers to humiliate me. My once pure, jade-like skin was now covered in bruises. The once noble and revered daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion had become the plaything of his henchmen. My hands were bound, and my mouth was gagged. I cried out to heaven, but no one answered. I cried out to earth, but no one responded. I did not know how long it had been, nor how many people had come into the room. I felt my body growing colder and colder until I stopped breathing. The next moment, I found myself floating to the regent's mansion, where he was celebrating his wedding night. His bride was the eldest daughter of the Duke of Dingwa, my closest confidant, my handkerchief-sharing friend, Jiang Mingzhu. Her aunt was the current empress. Jiang Mingzhu, dressed in a phoenix crown and wedding robes, looked at Xiaoyunjing with deep affection. Jinggu, with my empress aunt's support, you will surely hold absolute power over the court. As my aunt said, the emperor's illness won't last much longer. And the young prince is still so young. In the future, this world can only belong to Jinggu alone. On the surface, my father and the stubborn old Chancellor Shui are on good terms. But behind the scenes, they've hated that stubborn fool for years. Jinggu, thank goodness you listened to me and sent Shuangwen to the lowest brothel. She always claimed to be pure and virtuous. I'll make sure she's trampled by thousands. Only then did I realize that the two of them had already been involved in an affair, and Jiang Mingzhu's intentions were even more malicious. My father's downfall must have been orchestrated by the Dingwa Marquis's mansion. On that day, when he raided my Shui family, he claimed that the Chancellor's mansion was plotting a rebellion. He said it was precisely because he came from the Chancellor's mansion that he had requested permission to raid my Shui family, to demonstrate his loyalty to the emperor. Thus, my father was executed by slow slicing. My elder brother was beheaded, and I was sent to a lowly brothel. Every single person in my household was killed, with no one spared. Yet he spent 3 years in the Chancellor's mansion, living in luxury, and the mansion never treated him harshly. As for Jiang Mingzhu, we grew up together since childhood, and I treated her like my own sister. Seeing the two of them so arrogant and ungrateful, I wanted to tear them to pieces. Forgetting that I was just a spirit, I immediately picked up the jeweled hairpin from my bun and stabbed it towards Xiaoyunjing's neck with all my strength. But the next moment, my body began to fade away. Xiaoyunjing, Jiang Mingzhu, if there is a next life, I will definitely. When I opened my eyes again, I was at the Lantern Festival by the Qinhuai River. The day I saved Xiaoyunjing, my rebirth was ill-timed. By the time I realized I had been reborn, Xiaoyunjing was already gone from the Qinhuai River. I had Yushu ask the young nobles and ladies admiring the lanterns nearby, but she couldn't find out who had saved the ragged Xiaoyunjing. It was the depths of winter, with freezing cold and ice forming on the ground. The gates of the wealthy were filled with the stench of wine and meat, while the streets were littered with the frozen corpses of the poor. There were simply too many beggars frozen to death on the streets. These aristocratic youths and noble women, preoccupied with admiring the lanterns and solving riddles. Would never notice the ragged Xiaoying. An old woman limped over, listened to my description of the young man, and asked if I was looking for a boy with a broken jade pendant at his waist. In my previous life, when I first met Xiaoying, he had a piece of broken jade hanging from his waist. And precisely because the broken jade was worthless, no one bothered to take it from him. I nodded repeatedly and hurriedly gave her a string of coins. She took them tremblingly, bowed to me, and said that the handsome beggar had followed a girl in red. As for the rest, she knew nothing. I was startled. In this life, how did Jiang Mingzhu already know Xiaoying? Could it be? Was she also reborn? In my previous life, when Xiaoying stopped me, I was holding a rabbit lantern and happily guessing riddles with Yuzhu. He was dressed in rags, kneeling on the ground, shivering from the cold. Though his hair and eyebrows were covered in snow, it was clear he was a handsome young man with striking features. Seeing his pitiful state, I immediately had Yuzhu bring him a bag of silver. Perhaps it was the dim light of night, but I didn't notice the fleeting gleam of greed and envy in his eyes as I handed him the silver. Not only did he refuse the silver, but he bowed his head and said he could never repay the debt of saving his life. He was willing to become a servant, to work as hard as an ox or a horse in loyalty to me. Seeing his sincerity, and since my father's study was in need of a servant to sweep and tidy, I agreed. Who could have imagined that my thoughtless act would become the spark that led to the downfall of the Shui family? In my father's study, he studied poetry and classics day and night, and even my father praised him highly. In the cold night, he forgot to sleep while reading, and the incense burned out in the brazier, leaving no smoke. When he held the book and read, he stood alone, detached from the world, exuding the grace of a gentleman. And every time his gentle, peach blossom eyes glanced at me, my face turned crimson, and I hurriedly looked away. Seeing his dedication to studying and his lofty aspirations, I secretly invited a tutor to help him with his studies. I also had new clothes, including silk robes and socks, prepared and placed quietly by his bedside. Under my guidance and support, he became increasingly polite and refined, resembling a young gentleman from a distinguished family. However, there were always disgruntled servants who mocked him behind his back. They said he was obsessed with becoming a kept son-in-law, using every trick in the book to seduce their masters and mistresses. A particularly insolent servant, taking advantage of his master's absence, mocked him to his face, calling him my favorite concubine. That night, he burned all his fine clothes and donned the coarse garments of a stable hand. Seeing his anger, I had the servant beaten with a rod. Only now do I realize that the kindness I showed him was, in his eyes, nothing but humiliation and mockery. So, after he became the regent, the first thing he did was slaughter hundreds of my family members. He wanted to personally erase the shame of the past. But he didn't know that the fine robes and silk socks he valued so highly were nothing more than ordinary garments for the children of noble families. After rushing back to the mansion, the first thing I did was kneel before my father. "Father, your daughter is willing to enter the palace." My father looked at me, stunned that I was volunteering to enter the palace. Although the late emperor had left an edict ordering me to enter the palace, my father did not want me to go. He said that once one entered the palace gates, one was no longer in control of one's own destiny. In the harem, there were many concubines who, despite their youth and beauty, were abandoned by the emperor, left to sit by the incense burners until dawn. He did not want me to suffer such humiliation. As a chancellor who served 2 emperors, my father was utterly loyal to both the late emperor and the current emperor. During the late emperor's reign, my father was his most trusted minister, having made immense contributions to stabilizing his empire. Especially when the late emperor was assassinated, my father risked his life to shield him. taking a sword blow for him. To ensure the scholarly family's favor, the late emperor issued an imperial edict on his deathbed, stating that if my father agreed, I would become the current emperor's empress. The late emperor knew that the imperial court and the harem share the same fate. If the concubines in the harem were the daughters of the prime minister's family, not only would it protect the prestige of the prime minister's family, but it would also make my father even more loyal to the new emperor. My father used the excuse that I was spoiled and ignorant of palace etiquette, and he delayed the matter for a long time. But now I kneel before him, tears streaming down my face, speaking with unwavering resolve. Father, your daughter is unfilial. Compared to the Skia family's favor, my happiness is insignificant. Father is already old, and the court is in turmoil. How could I bear to leave the vast Skia mansion to rely solely on you? Please allow me to enter the palace. I will protect the scholarly ministry's prosperity for life. Having been given a second chance at life, I must protect the lives of the hundreds of people in the scholarly ministry. I refuse to be at the mercy of others, to be humiliated by everyone. I will ascend to the pinnacle of power. In the past, I was the fish on the chopping block, but now it is time for a change. My father eventually agreed. The day I enter the palace is set for the beginning of next month. Outside, snowflakes as soft as goose feathers drift down, while inside, the fire burns brightly in the hearth. The scent of clear pear and citrus fruits wafts from the charcoal, filling the room with a sweet fragrance. Truly, the shadows of flowers dance before the window, and the fragrance fills the house. I hold a hot water bottle in my hands, sitting on the bed, brewing tea while gazing at the plum blossoms outside the window. The paper on the windows was made of high-quality sky blue silk, thin and warm yet translucent, allowing the faint outlines of the red plum blossoms outside to peek through. In my previous life, after the Shui mansion was raided, Xia Yunjing set it ablaze, reducing all the antique artifacts and paintings to ashes. He claimed that the Shui family had amassed their wealth through exploitation and that such extravagance deserved to be burned to the ground. But he did not know that the Shui family had built its century-old estate with great effort. And these genuine works by famous artists were all obtained by my father and grandfather with great effort. The Shui mansion's prosperity was the well-deserved reward for my father's diligent service to the state. There is no greater virtue than forgiveness, and no greater vice than jealousy. The words of our ancestors were indeed true. Lost in thought, the maidservant outside did not have time to announce her arrival. Jiang Mingzhu, dressed in a bright red gown, directly lifted the pearl curtain and entered the room. Looking at her glaring red attire, I narrowed my eyes, my gaze dark and unclear. Soon, I regained my usual smile and ordered Yushu to give her a hot water bottle. She took it and examined it for a moment, a fleeting glimpse of jealousy flashing in her eyes before her face quickly broke into a smile. Oh, my dear sister, this is embroidery from Siam. Look at the elephants, they're so lifelike. It must be said that the Chancellor's mansion is indeed more grand than our Dingwa Marquis mansion. Such a rare item must have been newly bestowed by the Emperor to Uncle Shui. I hummed softly, clutching the hot water bottle tightly in my hand, and spoke softly. Didn't we agree to go out together yesterday to admire the lanterns? But I arrived late and couldn't find you anywhere. I even got harassed by some street thugs asking for money. Did you encounter any thugs or beggars? The charcoal crackled in the fire, and the room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. Jiang Mingzhu across from me didn't say a word, but the fleeting panic in her eyes didn't escape my notice. The next moment, she set down the hot water bottle and gripped my hand. Sister, please don't speak so harshly of your younger sister. What thugs and beggars? I wouldn't dare let such scum come near me. But I heard that you've agreed to enter the palace? Ah, my dear sister, I truly can't bear to part with you. The Emperor is already over 30. I'm afraid you'll suffer hardships. I heard that the Empress Rong, relying on the Emperor's favor, is extremely arrogant. Father mentioned to the concubine just the other day that the servants attending Empress Rong must be on their guard at all times. Or else. I gently withdrew my hand and cut her off. Since it concerns the imperial harem, how would the Dingwa Marquis' mansion know such things? Jiang Mingzhu didn't expect me to respond so directly and hurriedly explained. This. Everyone knows that Rong Fei is arrogant. With so many people in the palace, it's only natural that rumors would reach the emperor's ears. Then, she called her confidant forward and took a silk box from her hand. Sister, I heard that you are going to the palace. And I am truly heartbroken. We were once the best of sisters. But once you enter the palace gates, it's like entering a deep sea. Please take care of yourself in the future. This is a jade bracelet with gold inlay that Father recently obtained from the South Sea. The gold beads on it were cast from the rose-carved gold hairpin of the late emperor's favorite concubine. After much consideration, I could only think of this precious item to match your worth. I glanced at it. The glass was crystal clear. The gold inlay was exquisite. And the gold beads added a touch of elegance. I feigned joy and quickly ordered Yushu to take it and put it away. But the next moment, she smiled and grabbed my hand, putting the bracelet on for me. Sister, you're being too formal. We are sisters. And we are one. Since it's your heartfelt gift, I will wear it every day. As soon as Jiang Mingzhu left, I slipped off the bracelet and tossed it onto the table. My expression cold. She came today because I deliberately had the servants invite her to the Prime Minister's mansion. After hearing the beggar woman's words, I suspected that Jiang Mingzhu had also been reborn. Just like me. That's why she had found Xia Yunjing in advance and brought him home early. Because Jiang Mingzhu loved wearing red clothes the most. And in her previous life, she was deeply in love with Xia Yunjing. At the spring banquet in her previous life, Jiang Mingzhu saw Xia Yunjing behind me and fell in love at first sight. She even hinted to me that the Jiangwa Gongfu was in need of a private tutor and asked if I could send Xia Yunjing to her mansion. Xia Yunjing had a beautiful handwriting and was highly educated. Jiang Mingzhu wanted Xia Yunjing to be her tutor. I didn't care either way. But Xia Yunjing overheard me telling Jiang Mingzhu about his background. And he stormed off in anger. Later, I found out that he was angry for two reasons. First, he was afraid of being mocked. And second, he believed that I had treated him like a lowly stable hand who could be bought and sold at will. Looking back now, it wasn't about being a man of principle, it was clearly because the Prime Minister's mansion was more prestigious than the Duke of Ding's mansion. Although the Duke of Ding's mansion was backed by Empress Jiang Rolan, the imperial harem was not allowed to interfere in politics. As the chancellor, my father was second only to the emperor. But Jiang Mingzhu didn't know the reason. Now she's hiding her feelings because she thinks I'll fall for Xia Yunjing and want to monopolize him like she did in the previous life. But my feelings for Xia Yunjing are too shallow. Just a fleeting infatuation. What I feel for him is more compassion. He came from a humble background but worked hard to improve himself. And I couldn't bear to see his talent wasted. Looking out the window at the falling snow, the corners of my mouth curled upward. She did not know that in this life, the one destined for misfortune would be her Dingwa Gongfu. The next moment, Yushu entered with a bowl of chestnuts. She shook off the scattered jade and pearls, placed the raw chestnuts around the fire pit, and chatted with me while warming herself. Miss, look outside. The snow has started again. They say a good snow foretells a bountiful year. Next year will surely be a good omen. Looking at the bracelet on the table, I gently rubbed the gold beads with my fingertips and spoke softly. Yes. Next year will surely be a good omen. By the way, hurry and summon Dr. Zhao. Be careful not to let others overhear. On the day I entered the palace, the heavy snow that had been falling for several days finally stopped. As far as the eye could see, the entire imperial city was covered in a layer of snow, white and pristine, every brick and tile reflecting the dignity of the imperial family. Palace carriages came and went, finally coming to a stop before a vermilion palace gate. The lonely courtyard was quiet as spring approached, and the pear blossoms lay scattered on the ground. The doors closed. I lifted the curtain of the palanquin and saw the plaque on the vermilion gate, Funi Palace. The 3 golden characters were bold and powerful, and the faint traces of wear on the plaque only added to the weight and age of the palace walls. Dressed in jade-colored palace robes, I stepped out slowly. My aunt hurriedly helped me into the hall, urging me to rest first. She said shyly that the Empress had thought of my journey and wanted me to rest properly. However, she had already arranged for me to join the other palace concubines for tea this afternoon, followed by an exciting ice skating performance. She said that if I would honor her with my presence, I could join them in the afternoon, and the Empress would introduce me to the other sisters. Since the Empress had spoken so plainly, it was clear that I had no choice. I maintained my composure, bowed in gratitude, and then instructed Yushu to give her a silver ingot. After some polite small talk, I saw my aunt out and finally relaxed. The bow I had just made to my aunt was specifically for the Empress to see. On my first day in the palace, I had to deal with the Empress, so I couldn't afford to be careless. As the aunt of Jiang Mingzhu, she naturally belonged to the Dingwa Gongfu faction. My father's downfall was undoubtedly connected to the Empress. Now that I was in the palace, I had to be on my guard at all times. After resting for a moment, I changed into a new crimson pomegranate-colored palace gown and a goose downline jacket, and had Yushu help me with my makeup. Looking at my own face in the bronze mirror, with its delicate eyebrows and pearl-like teeth, I carefully pinned the snow lotus jade-carved hairpin brought from the Prime Minister's mansion into my hair. As my black hair was gradually gathered and pinned up, the hairpin seemed to hold the dreams of 1,000 years of splendor. It was time to meet the Empress. As I stepped through the threshold of the Changchun Palace, the Empress was still taking her afternoon nap. There was not a single palace concubine in the hall besides me. Chichio, the Empress's attendant, saw me arrive so early and hurriedly served tea and invited me to sit. I silently thanked my luck for having eaten a few bites of steamed pigeon and stir-fried chicken breast earlier, otherwise I would have been starving by now. As I sipped my tea, the palace concubines began to arrive in small groups. At that moment, Empress Jiang Rulan emerged from behind the pearl curtains and seated herself on the main throne. Her bright yellow palace robe was adorned with intricate and elaborate embroidery. Her hair was adorned with several Eastern pearl phoenix hairpins, a symbol reserved exclusively for the Empress. The palace concubines sipped their tea and chatted with the Empress for a while before Rongfei finally arrived late. Noticing my unfamiliar face, her beautiful peach-shaped eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a hint of disdain. After taking her seat, before the Empress could speak, her sarcastic voice rang out. "Oh, I hear this is the concubine bestowed by the late Emperor's imperial edict? In my opinion, she's nothing special." Then, a smile appeared on her lips as she took the tea offered by the palace maid. Empress Jiang Rulan saw this and her eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. But she quickly regained her smile. "Since the late emperor bestowed this marriage, it is evident that your status is very high. Ruo Fei, teasing the concubine in such a manner is rather presumptuous. I find the concubine to be quite charming, with her bright eyes and white teeth. She is truly a rare beauty. What do the other sisters think?" The other concubines below nodded in agreement. It seemed that Ruo Fei's sharp tongue had earned her many enemies over the years. Upon hearing this, Rong Fei's face darkened, and she snorted coldly before storming out. She left me and the other palace concubines staring at each other in shock. Even though we knew Rong Fei was favored, she had the audacity to leave in front of all the other concubines, clearly not giving the Empress any face. It was evident how arrogant and spoiled she was. I furrowed my brows and clenched the handkerchief in my hand. The Empress was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and the Rong Fei was no pushover either. It was said that the Rong Fei had a deep affection for the Emperor. Seeing her breathtaking beauty, It was clear she had every reason to be spoiled by her favor. Today's glimpse revealed that the Empress and the Rongfei had been at odds for quite some time. The Empress deliberately mentioned my appearance to provoke the gentle concubine. Perhaps she had already prepared to sit back and watch the two of them fight. After all, her elder brother is the Duke of Dingua. And upon hearing the gentle concubine's name, I couldn't help but think of someone else. After a moment, I quietly made up my mind. After some small talk, everyone donned their cloaks and moved to the Red Plum Pavilion outside the palace to watch the ice skaters. Without the Empress Rong, the atmosphere was much more harmonious. But I never expected that the Emperor would summon me to his bedchamber that night. When the imperial carriage stopped outside the palace, I had already prepared for bed. I had spent the entire day entertaining the palace concubines, and my face was almost numb from smiling. But when I saw the palace attendants from the Chamber of Ceremonial Affairs, I dared not delay and quickly bathed and changed into my nightgown. When I arrived at the hall, the Emperor was still reviewing memorials. Dressed in imperial robes, he stood tall and imposing, exuding maturity as he bent over the desk, examining the documents with meticulous care. I thought to myself, the Emperor appears healthy and robust. He does not seem like someone who is ill. But why did Jiang Mingzhu say in my previous life that the Emperor's illness would not last more than a few days? Could it be the faces of the Empress, Jiang Mingzhu, Xia Yunjing, and the Duke of Dingwa flashed through my mind? I shook my head gently, trying not to let myself be distracted. The next moment, I was dressed in a moon-white nightgown, holding a bowl of cinnamon and porium mushroom porridge, kneeling before him. Your Majesty, it is late at night and the wind is cold. The snow outside has not yet melted, and this is the coldest time of the year. Please take care of your health. This is a nourishing porridge prepared by the kitchen at my request. Please accept it with a smile. He finally raised his head, and I could see his face clearly. His pitch-black eyes were deep and mysterious, and his mature features betrayed no emotion. The dragon robe around him emanated a chill, symbolizing the supreme dignity of the ruler of the realm. Seeing my black hair cascading down my chest, with only a pale jade hairpin in my hair, a flash of admiration crossed his eyes. Everyone else who sees me is adorned with jewels and ornaments. But you are so simple and elegant. I heard from Chancellor Shui that his daughter is quite spoiled. But now that I see her, she doesn't seem like the person described in the rumors. You two have conspired to deceive me. The crime of deceiving the Emperor is no small matter. Upon hearing this, I suddenly covered my mouth and giggled, turning my head to glance at him. My lips parted slightly. The Emperor is the Son of Heaven, standing atop the world. Of course, it is cold at such heights, but I think that the simple attire of an ordinary maiden might allow the Emperor to see the warmth of human life. However, as a maiden, I should stay in the inner chambers and study the etiquette of the harem for a while, so that I may present myself to the Emperor in the future. If the Emperor likes a daughter's spoiled nature, this concubine can naturally be spoiled and arrogant. Just don't blame this concubine for overstepping her bounds when the time comes. Having said that, I quickly covered my face with a handkerchief. My cheeks already flushed red with shame. Hearing my subtle teasing, he burst into laughter and tossed aside his brush and ink. He strode toward me, extending his hands. The spring chill is biting. Kneeling on the ground will hurt your knees. Come to me. He then picked me up in his arms and carried me step by step toward the golden dragon bed. The palace attendants lowered the beaded curtains and withdrew discreetly. On the bed, as he drew close to me, my face flushed with shame. But I knew I must use his favor to protect the Shui mansion, confront the Empress, and eliminate our enemies. Recalling the tragic manner of my death in my previous life, I steeled my resolve. Trembling slightly, I wrapped my slender arms around his neck and welcomed his overwhelming kisses. That night, the red candles burned warmly, and the sound of snow falling could be heard through the window. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was already high in the sky, and the emperor had already gone to court. I took the congee prepared by the palace attendants and silently marveled at the emperor's meticulousness, even preparing breakfast in advance. Then, I picked up the brush and ink. One by one, the delicate characters transformed into blossoms, blooming vibrantly on chien paper. The poem written above them was even more evocative. Drunk in the banquet hall, I hold you close to my heart. Under the hibiscus canopy, how can I resist you? I think of you constantly, and my love is endless. Last night, during the red candles and fine hour, the emperor praised me for having the charm of a young woman. Today, I will gift him a poem to bring him joy in secret. I am fully aware that the emperor's favor toward me is merely for novelty. Since I seek only favor and not love, I shall be the most qualified tool. After washing and dressing, I left the Qingqing Palace and headed straight for the Weiyang Palace. That was the sleeping quarters of the Rongfei. No one knew that in my heart. I had already laid out a grand plan. I heard news of Xia Yunjing again half a year later. Although I had already arranged spies to monitor the Dingwagong mansion, they had found nothing until recently. Another year of the imperial examinations had arrived, and it was said that a prodigious talent surnamed Xia had emerged this year. He was both literate and martial, could compose poetry in 7 steps, and his impromptu governance theory during the palace examination deeply impressed the emperor. After the palace examination, it was the emperor's birthday banquet, and I happened to receive a letter from my father. He said that this scholar surnamed Xia came from the Jiang family of the Dingwa Marquis mansion. My father sighed repeatedly, saying that if he were under his command, he would certainly cherish such talent. I threw the letter into the flames, lowering my eyes. Father, you don't know that it was precisely because he wasn't from our Xiang mansion that we escaped disaster. My father was loyal and upright, dedicated to the welfare of the state and the people. So naturally there were scheming individuals plotting against him in the shadows. I fear that the Dingwa Marquis, who is so skilled at playing both sides, is one of those seeking to bring down the Shui mansion. Having been reborn, I now realize the subtle clues I missed in my previous life. Looking back now, Xia Yunjing is so intelligent, could he really be just a simple beggar? After all, even though his jade pendant is now broken, its quality is exceptional, far beyond what an ordinary person could possess. In just half a year, he could compose poetry and paint, and his work is on par with that of renowned scholars. Without a solid cultural foundation and basic literacy, one could never achieve such mastery in poetry and prose. Who is he really? After much deliberation, I wrote a letter and instructed Yushu to deliver it secretly to my father's mansion. On the day of the emperor's birthday banquet, Yushu informed me that Jiang Mingzhu sought an audience. Upon seeing me, Jiang Mingzhu's face lit up with joy. But the moment she noticed my swollen abdomen, her smile froze on her face. I was several months pregnant. After serving the emperor, I gained his favor. After becoming pregnant, the emperor was overjoyed and bestowed upon me the title of Shu. I became the Shu imperial concubine. She quickly regained her smile and tightly held my hand. Seeing my empty wrist, a cold gleam flashed in her eyes as she spoke coldly. Empress Shu, may you be well. Perhaps the empress is accustomed to the fine things in the palace. The bracelet your sister sent you must have been discarded and gathering dust by now. If the empress does not like your sister's gift, you could have simply told her. We were once sisters. Yet now that you have become the empress, you dare to look down on your own sister. I pretended to tidy the strands of hair on her forehead and gently pulled her tightly clenched hand away. Then, I ordered a palace maid to bring a silk-lined box. Inside was a 9-colored gold and jade hairpin from the western regions. I pinned it for her. We have known each other for many years, and our bond is deep. The treasure you sent me was indeed precious. But the new maid was in a hurry and accidentally broke it. The eunuchs in the imperial household department spent a long time repairing it. But later some dishonest palace attendants replaced it with money and were severely punished. Knowing that you would be coming soon, I specially took the hairpin the emperor bestowed upon me to give to you. Do you like it? The next moment, her expression grew complex. Jealousy, anger, relief, worry, and hatred. I knew she was displeased that I wasn't wearing the bracelet and worried I might notice something amiss. Only when I mentioned the bracelet was lost did she relax. However, she would naturally panic, because those few gold beads were filled with musk. After she gave me the bracelet that day, I immediately had Yushu find Dr. Zhao. After a thorough examination, Dr. Zhao indeed discovered that the musk had been secretly hidden inside the gold beads. However, the surface of the gold beads remained intact, with only a small hole in contact with the skin. Such craftsmanship truly demonstrated the meticulous skill involved. Jiang Mingzhu, you really went to great lengths for this. After speaking for a while, a maid whispered something to her, and she hurriedly left. She walked quickly, unaware of the figure following her from behind the rockery. I saw her throw the hairpin I had given her into the lotus pond beside the rockery. Her face dark and her tone venomous. You're just a concubine, what do you have to be so proud of? Wait until my Jing holds absolute power and becomes regent. The first family I'll eliminate is the Shui clan. In my previous life, you stole my Jing. This time, I'm glad I found him first. Shui Rui. We've known each other for years. On the surface, we're as close as sisters. But you've always looked down on me. I've had enough of you. You may be enjoying your glory now, but I'll see how long your favor lasts. Just as I suspected, she had also been reborn. At the palace banquet, I saw Xia Yunjing, under Jiang Mingzhu's care. His attire was more luxurious than that of ordinary aristocratic youths. As everyone congratulated and praised Xia Yunjing, Jiang Mingzhu introduced him as her distant cousin. But I clearly saw the fleeting coldness in Xia Yunjing's eyes as he glanced at Jiang Mingzhu. I knew that Xia Yunjing had always been that ruthless, selfish, and overly suspicious person. He had never changed. Jiang Mingzhu loved him so much that she must have given him the best of everything. But the more she did so, the more Xia Yunjing hated the Dingguo Marquis' mansion. After all, in his eyes, he was a man of honor. And the more she cared for him, the more he saw it as a blatant insult. And in this life, it seemed that the Dingguo Marquis' mansion had become the unlucky one. I let out a cold snort and sipped my wine slowly. In the golden hall, the emperor, dressed in bright yellow, sat on the golden throne carved with dragons, exuding an air of unparalleled nobility. Below the stage, music and dance filled the air, with the sounds of string instruments and flutes harmonizing beautifully, creating a delightful melody. Court musicians and dancers took the stage, draped in pale purple veils, their figures graceful and alluring. Truly, the beauty of the dancers was like lotus flowers in bloom, a sight the world had never seen before. As the dance concluded, the court officials raised their cups in celebration, their words brimming with flattery toward the emperor. The emperor held Xia Yunjing in high esteem, as his performance in the palace examination had been outstanding. The emperor specially conferred upon him the title of imperial scholar, allowing him to enter the palace to accompany the prince in his studies. Though his face was filled with joy, I clearly saw a trace of resentment in his eyes as he turned to drink. I quickly picked up the wine cup and drank a sip to cover my face. If I had waited a moment longer, I feared I would have laughed out loud. Xia Yunjing truly has ambitious designs. He had expected to be granted a higher-ranking official position, or at least appointed as a compiler in the Hanlin Academy, with the rank of 7th grade. Instead, he ended up as a tutor to the prince. The late emperor had decreed that the current tutor was not to involve himself in court affairs, but only to oversee the prince's studies. He didn't know that I had spent days whispering in the emperor's ear to ensure he wasn't given a more prominent role. As he left the table, I used the excuse of changing clothes and quietly slipped out of the golden hall. Xia Yunjing. For now, I won't kill you. After all, you must first become my tool. Not long after the birthday banquet, Jiang Mingzhu came to find her aunt, the empress. It was said that they talked for quite some time. I claimed to miss my former sister and ordered Yushu to invite Jiang Mingzhu to the empress's Changchun palace. When she arrived, I was busy sewing a ceremonial robe for the child in my womb, embroidered with a large tiger, which was truly adorable. When I saw her, I was startled. Since the birthday banquet, she had grown noticeably thinner, and her eyes were red as if she had been crying. There was even a faint bruise on her neck, which she had clearly tried to hide, but the purple mark was still faintly visible. I pretended not to notice and asked her calmly, "What's wrong, little sister? Did someone bully you? If it was any of those bastards who dared to lay a finger on me, I'll make them pay dearly. By the way, I heard that the new court favorite at the emperor's birthday banquet is your distant cousin. Such a talented cousin, and you've kept it a secret from your sister all this time." Seeing her complicated expression, as if she had something on her mind, I didn't ask any further. After drinking the tea, I let her leave the palace. Watching her slightly hunched figure, I knew her life wasn't easy. Xia Yunjing, you did well. You haven't disappointed me. Lately, I've been seeing the imperial physician for a few days, using illness as an excuse. At the same time, I also had the imperial physician obtain the emperor's medical records. The emperor has been practicing martial arts for years and has always been in good health. However, recently, the imperial physician mentioned that he has been feeling a bit of discomfort in his chest for no apparent reason, especially in the days following the 1st and 15th of each month. These 2 days are when the emperor stays in the empress's palace every month. I furrowed my brows. It seems the empress has already made her move. Soon, the court was ablaze with turmoil. Xia Yunjing colluded with several court officials and suddenly submitted a memorial accusing the Dingwa Marquis' mansion of treason. The memorial stated that a few days ago, he saw a dragon robe in a secret room within the Dingwa Marquis' mansion. This tactic of killing someone by accusing them of treason was indeed Xia Yunjing's signature move. He knew exactly where everyone's weakest points were. He had timed it perfectly and struck with precision. Upon hearing that the Dingwa Marquis was secretly harboring an imperial robe, he flew into a rage and immediately dispatched the imperial guards to raid the Dingwa Marquis mansion. When the deed is done, there's no need for further deception. Even birds and white cranes would be suspicious. The emperor's temper has grown increasingly erratic lately, having already demoted several of the late emperor's trusted ministers. Let alone such a major offense as hoarding a dragon robe. The late emperor's trusted ministers had once risked their lives to plead for mercy, earning the late emperor's deep favor. They believed the current emperor would be the same, but they were wrong. The emperor is not the late emperor. The imperial guards immediately reported back. Not only did they discover the imperial robe, but they also found millions of taels of snow white silver and various rare treasures, akin to a national treasury. Under the desperate pleas of Empress Jiang Rulan, her brother's sentence was commuted from slow execution by dismemberment to immediate beheading. The rest of the Jiang family were all executed by beheading. To distance himself from the Jiang family, Xia Yunjing volunteered to oversee the execution. The emperor, moved by his loyalty and merit, specially appointed him as Minister of Rituals, a third-rank official. Of course, this was thanks to my efforts. That day in the Golden Hall, I found him in the corner outside the hall. I told him that if he joined forces with me, I could give him everything he desired. He was clever. With just a hint, He knew I disliked the Empress and the Dingwagong mansion. Thus, believing he had the Chancellor's mansion as his backing, he quickly revealed his true nature in front of Jiang Mingzhu. But he didn't know that while the mantis catches the cicada, the oriole waits behind. Who doesn't know how to use someone else's knife to kill? If we don't lift him up high, how can we bring him crashing down? Soon, one crisis followed another, and the Empress was in trouble. Ruo Fei and I were playing chess when a palace attendant rushed in, reporting that the Empress had attempted to poison the Emperor. When we hurried to the Changchun Palace, the Empress was crying and pleading her innocence, saying she had been framed. It turned out that a palace attendant with a broken leg had desperately blocked the Emperor's palanquin, claiming that the Empress had secretly poisoned the Emperor. We had only just arrived when the head of the Imperial Medical Bureau rushed over. As they followed orders and inspected the various medicinal dishes in the palace, I nodded discreetly to Rong Fei. Rong Fei understood and glanced casually before speaking softly. This sandalwood incense is also used in my Weiyang Palace. Why does it smell slightly different from the one in my palace? Jiang Rolan's face immediately betrayed a hint of panic. She wanted to say something, but upon seeing the Emperor's gloomy expression, she closed her mouth. After a detailed examination, the imperial physician said that an extra spice had been added to the incense. This extra spice was not poisonous, but it must not be mixed with laurel. Otherwise, over time, it would cause palpitations and dementia. As soon as the imperial physician finished speaking, I rushed to the Emperor's side, my face covered with tears, and said in a delicate voice, "Your Majesty, I remember you once said that whenever you stayed in the Empress's palace, she would personally prepare a bowl of duruo, poria, and laurel porridge for you, right? In that case, even if there wasn't much laurel in the porridge, over the years, Your Majesty, you are the one I have always relied on. Who would have thought that someone could be so cruel? If anything happens to you, I will not live either. Your Majesty, this matter must be thoroughly investigated." Seeing me crying pitifully, the Emperor gripped my hand tightly and glared coldly at the Empress. "Empress, it was you. I have treated you well. Why would you harm me like this? You have truly disappointed me." The Empress quickly threw herself at the Emperor's feet, defending herself. "Your Majesty, please see clearly. After all these years as husband and wife, how could you believe others so easily and accuse me? You are my lord and master. I respect and love you more than anything. Your Majesty, this porridge was prepared by Cui Ping, who serves by my side. I merely asked her to make some nourishing porridge for your stomach, but she dared to do such a thing. Cui Ping, you dare to attempt to harm the Emperor with such a vile and despicable method. Do you know the gravity of your crime?" Cui Ping, standing behind her, froze for a moment before kneeling down resolutely to beg for mercy. Seeing the Empress shift all the blame onto the palace maid, I couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Indeed, mountain streams rise and fall easily, and the hearts of men are fickle and changeable. The Empress would do anything to save herself. But before the Emperor could speak, Rong Fei emerged from the Empress's chambers, holding several letters in her hands. Her face was deathly pale, and she knelt on the ground in terror. She claimed to have seen something she shouldn't have and begged the Emperor for mercy. The Emperor glanced at the palace attendant, who then presented the letters in her hands. The letters were filled with words of longing, each line written in blood, expressing her deep yearning for her beloved. Upon closer inspection, it became clear that each poem was a hidden head poem. The name that appeared faintly in the poems was that of the late Yonglin Wang. He was the Emperor's elder brother, the former fourth prince. As soon as the words were spoken, the Empress snatched the letters. She threw them into the charcoal brazier like a madwoman, and flames immediately erupted. The palace attendants by the Emperor's side disregarded the scorching heat and reached out to retrieve the letter from the flames. The empress, who was usually dignified and composed, hurried forward, trying to snatch the letter from the palace attendants. But the next moment, she was held back by the palace attendants, her hair disheveled, looking disheveled and pitiful. The emperor glared at her and slapped her hard across the face. You truly are my good empress. So the person you have been thinking of day and night is actually my elder brother. I remember that he was greatly favored by our late father. If he hadn't died young, who would have ruled this empire today? It's hard to say. I detest those who are fickle toward me. Since you have such deep feelings for him, go and join him. Announce my decree. The empress has gone mad and taken her own life. Shuangwen, the eldest daughter of the Shui family, is of gentle nature and virtuous character. She has served in the palace with diligence and caution, showing respect and reverence to her superiors and kindness and fairness to her subordinates. She upholds the proper etiquette of the imperial harem and serves as a model for the 6 palaces. She is truly capable of assisting in the administration of state affairs. She is hereby proclaimed empress. Upon hearing this, the empress collapsed to the ground. She knew that the tide had turned. The emperor's elder brother, the former 4th prince, was the pain she could not speak of during her youth. When she was young and entered the palace, she accidentally fell into the lotus pond, and it was the 4th prince who saved her. From that day onward, this dashing and charming 4th prince became the eternal dream of the empress. Who could understand the heart of a young girl? It was as if Zhao Sei had just stopped playing the phoenix-shaped zither, and the Shu Qin was about to play the strings of the mandarin duck. Just as she was about to break the ice and confess her feelings, she received the news that he had fallen off a cliff while riding a horse and died unexpectedly. The late emperor had few heirs, leaving only the emperor as his sole son, who thus ascended the throne as desired. After the 4th prince's death, under her father, the Marquis of Guo was scheming. She ceased her mourning. Instead, she married into the Eastern Palace in accordance with tradition, becoming the crown princess. Perhaps from that moment onward, she had already resolved to eliminate the emperor. When Empress Jiang Rulan was granted white silk, I followed the palace attendants to the Changchun Palace. Seeing her no longer as lively as before, with disheveled hair and rumpled clothes, she was only focused on writing poetry. Now that her power had waned, the most secret matters of her heart had already been discovered by the emperor. She had no need to hide anything, and her poetry was filled with the name of the 4th prince. A gust of wind blew into the hall, scattering the xian paper everywhere. Dressed in white, her black hair hanging down to the ground, she ran around the hall chasing after the pieces of paper, looking like a madwoman. In just a few days, Changchun Palace became a cold palace, with no trace of spring left. Now it was almost midsummer, but the palace was unusually bleak and cold. The carp in the pond outside the hall were all floating belly up, no longer as lively as they had been. She picked up a piece of xian paper from the floor, tilted her head and looked at me, talking to herself. Do you think the emperor really loves you? He just wants to use you to control your father. He's been furious with your father for years. Your father was devoted to the people, but he failed to see that the current emperor lacks the virtue of the late emperor. Back then, my 4th brother was skilled in archery and horsemanship. How could he have suddenly fallen from his horse and died? My father once said that he was the perfect choice for crown prince in the late emperor's eyes. It was the emperor who killed my 4th brother. The 4th prince was a gentleman as graceful as the moon after a storm, the finest man in the world. I hate the emperor with all my heart. He killed the person I loved most. So I took his life. After hearing her words, a cold gleam flashed in my eyes. I then sat down on the imperial throne where she had been sitting and took the tea handed to me by a palace attendant. You know, this imperial throne is indeed different from the lower seats. It's much more comfortable to sit on. You are now a man on the brink of death. unaware of what is happening outside. Let me tell you some news. After your elder brother was stripped of his title and his estate was confiscated, your father, the Duke of Hua, was also stripped of his official rank. Ever since the emperor saw the imperial robe at the Dingwa Marquis' mansion, his temper has become even more unpredictable. After your father was stripped of his title, he pleaded for mercy on your behalf, but was instead accused of failing to raise his daughter properly. He was imprisoned by the emperor and will be executed shortly. The entire household has been exiled as slaves and will never be allowed to return to the capital. Upon hearing this, she stumbled and spat out a mouthful of blood. Shui Rui, why did you harm my entire family? We have no grudge against you. Why? Cough cough. I walked up to her, slapped her hard across the face, and whispered into her ear. Is that true? We really have no grudge against you? Do you know that this is my second life? In my previous life, you tampered with the porridge, causing the emperor to fall into a state of stupidity and foolishness. You then followed Jiang Mingzhu's advice and promoted Xia Yunjing, in order to protect the glory and wealth of your elder brother, the Duke of Ding. You fulfilled Xia Yunjing's wishes and eliminated his arch-rival, my father. After all, the imperial edict to exterminate the entire Shui clan was issued behind the scenes by you, wasn't it? After the prime minister's mansion fell, hundreds of Shui clan members were executed. Xia Yunjing held absolute power in the former court, while you enjoyed unparalleled honor in the harem. Now you say we have no grudge against each other? Looking at her sitting there dumbfounded, a flash of disgust crossed my eyes. Do you know why Rongfei helped me? Her father was once my father's most favored disciple. The bond between master and disciple was no ordinary one. Rongfei entered the palace early and knows exactly what kind of person the emperor is. She only did it for her family's wealth and status. She's always wanted to eliminate you, and I promised her that once the deed is done, she and her family will enjoy a life of high office and wealth. Then, I nodded to the palace attendants behind me. They brought out a carved wooden tray with a white silk cloth on it. I leaned forward and raised my hand, the golden armor on my hand scraping her face. This white silk is a tribute from the Xianbei kingdom, a rare and precious item. Such a fine thing. Used to send you on your way, this is your good fortune. Go ahead. As soon as he finished speaking, several palace attendants picked up the white silk and approached her step by step. Her face was filled with terror. After struggling for a moment, she gradually fell silent. My eyes were filled with hatred so deep it seemed bottomless. Xia Yunjing, Jiang Mingzhu, don't rush. This executioner's blade is about to fall on your heads. On the night I gave birth to the young prince, the emperor suddenly passed away. Months earlier, the capital's renowned gynecologist and the head of the imperial hospital had examined my pregnancy and confirmed it was a boy. Even if it had been a princess, I wouldn't have been the least bit worried. After all, the emperor had 2 other young princes, and I was the empress. But upon hearing the news, the emperor was overjoyed. He immediately issued an imperial edict, stating that once the royal heir was born, he would be directly crowned crown prince. But on the night of the birth, the emperor suddenly suffered a heart attack and never regained consciousness. I glanced at Yuzhu beside me, and she quietly slipped away. I knew she was going to handle the incense in the palace. No one knew that the scent in the agarwood incense had been mixed with the agarwood incense in the Phoenix Hall. And since I was carrying the emperor's child, I used the excuse of feeling unwell every day to have him come see me daily. The scent of Suhexiang was different from that of Qinxiang, and the scent of the spice was colorless and odorless. So he didn't notice. In my palace's small kitchen, we prepared various dishes for him in every possible way. The laurel had long been stripped of its scent and was mixed into his food every day. Since the empress's death, his health had been declining day by day. Yes. The emperor knew he was no match for his elder brother and thus harbored resentment toward the old ministers of the previous dynasty. These old ministers had secretly supported the fourth prince in the past, including my father. However, my father was decisive and efficient in his role as regent. After decades in the court, he had earned the respect and affection of the old ministers, and the emperor dared not act against him for the time being. In the previous life, though his mind grew increasingly chaotic, did he truly know nothing about the imperial edict ordering the execution of the entire Shui family? In the realm of rulers and subjects, what is true? What is false? Whether he harmed my father or not, only he knows the truth. Leaving the emperor alive poses a threat to all loyal ministers of the previous dynasty. In this life, for the sake of my entire Shui clan, I cannot take any risks. A month later, the emperor passed away, and the entire country was plunged into mourning. With the imperial edict in hand, I became the most revered empress dowager, ruling behind the scenes. On the day of the regency, Xia Yunjing wore an expression of triumph. Yes, he believed that once everything was settled, the days of wielding absolute power in the court would finally arrive. But he never imagined that what awaited him was a storm of chaos. In the Golden Hall, he was impeached by his father's faction of ministers. A censor pointed at him and berated him for his wolfish ambitions. He also said that although Xia Yunjing was well-read, he was nothing but a hollow shell. During his time as a tutor to the young prince, he had taught him heretical ideas and slandered the late emperor, attempting to drive a wedge between father and son. The poems and books he had written for the young prince in the imperial garden were now brought out. The handwriting and content were undeniable. But this was not the most important thing. His father's favorite disciple, the father of the concubine Rong, stepped forward and revealed a shocking truth. A truth about Xia Yunjing's true identity. Xia Yunjing was a remnant of the previous dynasty. To be precise, he is the son of a concubine of a prince from the previous dynasty. The late emperor was kind-hearted. After establishing the new dynasty, he could not bear to kill innocent people indiscriminately, so he exiled the officials of the previous dynasty to Ningguda, forbidding them from ever returning to the capital. Over the decades, countless people perished in Ningguda. No one noticed that a frail young man had secretly escaped. His destination was the capital. As the son of a prince of the previous dynasty, the education he received in his youth laid the foundation for his intelligence. Ningguda was a place where no military strategist would dare to contest, so his ability to escape from there was a testament to his extraordinary skills. Having witnessed the hardships of life there, he naturally viewed the luxurious lives of the current ruling elite as a source of resentment and humiliation. Soon, I clapped my hands, and the imperial guards rushed forward. He finally realized that everything had been a trap I had set. But before he could scream, the leading general blocked his mouth and dragged him away. Watching him being dragged away like a dog, I smiled silently behind the golden curtain. Xia Yunjing, truly, karma comes full circle. Look, it's your turn now. In the dungeon, seeing Xia Yunjing and Jiang Mingzhu covered in blood and flesh, I covered my mouth and laughed softly. Jiang Mingzhu saw me dressed in luxurious attire, wearing a phoenix crown, and was momentarily stunned. The palace attendants beside her called me Empress Dowager, and she looked at me in disbelief. She knelt on the ground, begging me to save her. Seeing her covered in mud and drenched in prison water, I laughed heartily. Sitting on the bamboo chair prepared by the palace attendants, I spoke slowly. Jiang Mingzhu, you were reborn into this world, but you never expected this to be your fate, did you? I, too, was reborn. In my previous life, I saved Xia Yunjing, but he believed that the Shui family looked down on him, and he harbored deep hatred toward me. And you loved him deeply, believing I had stolen your man, filled with hatred toward me, even scheming to have the lowest of soldiers defile me. Your father despised my father, and you two colluded with the empress. While the emperor was in a daze, You made him believe my father had treasonous intentions, securing an imperial edict to exterminate my entire family. But in this life, even though you have Xiayunjing, you haven't had a single day of peace. Have you? This ungrateful wretch. I merely mentioned a few words lightly, promising him the title of regent if he helped me bring down the Duke of Dinghua. He eagerly sent your entire family to their deaths. Look at him, this is the man you once loved so deeply. Jiang Mingzhu. This is karma, it serves you right. I remember nothing. Only the hatred. She struggled fiercely, her mouth filled with muffled sobs, her words indistinguishable. Oh, right, their tongues had been cut out long ago. I took a sip of tea and turned to look at Xiayunjing beside me. Xiayunjing. Someone as heartless, self-serving, and overly suspicious as you, the more you help him, the more you'll end up nurturing a tiger that will eventually devour you. Do you know what betrayed your identity? It was that piece of broken jade you treasured so dearly. In my previous life, I remember clearly that even when you became a young master of a prominent family, you never parted with that piece of broken jade. So I relied on my memory to sketch the patterns on the broken jade, and had my father investigate and search for you, which is how I discovered your true identity. You truly kept me in the dark. Xiayunjing. Jiang Mingzhu. In the previous life, you killed my father and brothers, slaughtered my entire family, and dragged me to a brothel to endure endless humiliation. In this life, I will make sure you cannot live in peace or die in peace. After that, I quietly whispered a few words to the palace attendant and left the dungeon. Outside the dungeon, the lingxiao flowers danced in the breeze, scattering petals all over the ground. Truly a beautiful season. Though the chest is lost, it is not a great loss. There will be another summer next year. From now on, life will only get better. Afterward, the hottest new thing in the capital lately is the newly arrived puppet shadow play troupe. It is said to be a Western invention, where people are treated like silk dolls, with their limbs pierced through holes. Thick hemp ropes are threaded through the holes, with the other ends attached to wooden sticks. Behind them stands the puppeteer, who manipulates the wooden sticks, causing the puppet's limbs to move in various ways, similar to traditional shadow puppetry. However, the small paper figures from traditional shadow puppetry have now been replaced by real people. The two performers, dressed in vibrant costumes and heavily made up, are forced to perform various actions in front of the crowd. The hemp ropes move back and forth through their limbs, and their costumes are already stained with blood. Both of them are mute, able only to emit piercing, heart-wrenching cries. In no time, the ropes were soaked in blood, and the bloodstains on their costumes grew more numerous. Yet the two puppets dared not slack off, for if they were even a moment late, they would be met with a lashing. That wasn't all. It was said that at night, they were forced to entertain various high-ranking officials and nobles. For the young master had a pair of deep, loving eyes, and the young lady had a mouth of cherry-red lips. In just a few months, they had no idea how many times they had been secretly sent to the rooms of powerful officials. These officials in the capital didn't care about anything else, they just loved something new. Coming across such an interesting troupe was a goldmine. They brought plenty of silver and were eager to take them back to their mansions. Thus, at night they became tools for the troupe to flatter the officials, and during the day they were mere puppets being pulled by strings. The members of the troupe specifically told the nobles of the capital that the higher-ups had ordered them to do whatever they wanted with these two, but under no circumstances were they to be killed. After all, the higher-ups had made it clear that if the living puppets were to die, the entire troupe would have to present their heads. Every time the performance ended, the noblemen and women below went wild, and silver bills flew like snowflakes across the stage. Seeing another big profit for the day, the shifty-eyed puppeteers bowed repeatedly, grinning ear to ear. The next moment, He swung the whip holding the two puppets with even more force. Hearing the thunderous applause, those who had seen the puppet show said, "This is the most stunning shadow play we've ever seen in our lives." The end.